big news coming out of America, the States, because the 2025 Ryder Cup team has a captain, and it might not be who you thought it was, because Keegan Bradley has been named captain, and Patrick, he didn't even really know about it. Gets a phone call out of the blue, gets offered the captaincy, and we are off and running to Bethpage.
Where do we want to start from with this?
Well, let's start with
angle.
Well, let's start with
whatever
this.
you want.
Yeah, whatever you want. That's fine, and then I'll direct it as we go.
I will say it is a pretty insane pick, right? I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it is a pick that can be made right now just because of the circumstances around the U.S. Ryder Cup team.
Yeah.
I think this day and age, you have optically, whether it's true or not, you're coming off maybe the worst Ryder Cup captain. I don't know, like Watson was pretty bad, I guess, in Fort Furyk, maybe. I don't know. But optically, with all the access to Netflix and all the quotes out there, Zach Johnson's and all the new fans from COVID, right? This was really their first Ryder Cup too. It was Zach Johnson's the worst Ryder Cup captain ever. We need to change everything, completely abandon ship, yada, yada, yada. And so the bar is super low right now. And so you have a Ryder Cup where you're probably going to have the better team. You're going to have the home course advantage. And also the tension between the PGA Tour and LIV has kind of vanished a little bit. So it's a prime time to introduce a complete wild card pick. That is Keegan Bradley. I'll say that first.
Months of boys club discussion, Greg, about how this process normally works. This obliterates that.
Yeah, it certainly does. Maybe they're just trying to welcome Keegan in, let him in somehow, which I'm not quite sure how to figure that whole thing out. I thought Kyle had a really interesting take on the whole boys club mantra. A boys club is great if you win, because then it's camaraderie, like it was here in the States the last time we played at Whistling Straits. But if you lose, then it's a problem. And if there were other good players that were left out, it becomes a problem. But Keegan Bradley definitely wipes some of that away. And you get the sense that Keegan isn't going to pick guys because of just their name, right? He's going to try to pick the most deserving guys. Then he's certainly very clearly been in that spot. And perhaps it's a signal from the PGA of America saying, "Hey, we want to get out of this. We don't want to make choices based on feelings and player relationships or captain player relationships. We want to make choices based on who the best players are at the time." Now, of course, we have a lot of time, about a year and a half, to talk about all this and discuss it further. Because I'm not sure that the way we select the Ryder Cup team really allows you to pick the best players at that time. Separate issue. All in all, I think Keegan Bradley will do a great job. I think he'll be really prepared. He's close to the players. He's playing with them week in and week out. May even play his way onto the team as a captain's player, which is another interesting thing. But all in all, I think he's well positioned to put together a very strong Ryder Cup team.
There was a lot of speculation that this was going to be a Tiger Woods captain's team. Tiger was offered their position. He declined it. Quote, "With my new responsibilities to the tour and time commitments involved, I felt like I would not be able to commit the time to Team USA and the players required as a captain." KP, this is a completely different direction to go with Keegan Bradley. As Greg said, we're 14 months away from all of this coming to fruition. But what is week one confidence level in Keegan?
Oh, I'm all the way in. I mean, it was jarring when I first saw the news, like really jarring. Like, am I reading? It was almost June 6th levels of jarring. But I'm way in. I think Keegan will be a better captain than Tiger would have been. How about that?
Agreed. I completely agree with that.
Which
Just
sounds
because
crazy.
he cares.
No, I mean, I think that he did a great job at the press conference. I think that I just think sometimes in the past, players have been chosen. This is not necessarily why Tiger would be chosen, but players have been chosen to captain the Ryder Cup team based on their career resume, which has absolutely nothing to do with being a good captain. Like, it could not have less to do with being a good captain. And I think there's a little bit of that. Like, Tiger is the thing that Tiger has going for him is that players revere him and they will do anything for him. And you saw that at the President's Cup. I think he's really smart with like course setup and pairings and all that stuff. But is Tiger gonna like get in there and galvanize everybody and like be an emotional, like great leader that, you know, that the US sometimes needs? No, he's not. But Keegan will. Like, I think Keegan's gonna get out there and like really put his emotions and put himself out there. And that's, listen, like, you got to hit shots to win Ryder Cups, but man, how many times have we seen that on the Euro side of like guys willing to put themselves out there as the captain and say like, hey, I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm going to galvanize everybody. We're all pulling the same way. And the Euros do that year after year after year. It doesn't always lead to wins, but at least you give yourself a chance. And the Americans rarely do that. I think they actually did it pretty well with Stricker as somebody that stands out. And I think Keegan will do that better than almost anybody else they could have chosen.
I've done almost a complete 180 on Keegan over the years. I couldn't stand the guy probably 5 or 8 years ago. I thought he was neurotic and weird and I don't know. And now he is such a, I'm sure he's always been, but my perception of him is that he's such a vulnerable, I think is the perfect word, Kyle, thoughtful guy who is going to be prepared. And he might knife somebody to win this Ryder Cup. I mean,
well, but he also referenced what you were saying, Rick. He said, when I got out on tour, I thought the whole world was against me. And the thing, and he showed some self-awareness because he said, the thing I love about this current crop of players is that they have handled their careers differently than I did. And I just think there is a thoughtfulness there that it doesn't exist with everybody out there. That doesn't, again, these are not things that necessarily mean you're going to be a great captain, but I think they have more to do with being a great captain than just winning the PGA Championship does, or winning the US Open, or winning 5 majors does. So I'm very excited about it. I was very excited about it yesterday, even more so after listening to his presser today.
Yeah. So let's go through some of these points here. So we'll kind of run through these, but if you want to jump in, feel free. Patrick, Keegan made it fairly clear that he is not going to pick himself. If he makes the team on points, great. Otherwise, he will not select himself as a captain's pick. He won't be a playing captain. He will just be the captain.
Yeah, I think something else that people kind of glossed over is he said he wants to change the qualifying too. The number of spots. So I assume that probably means back to 8, maybe that 8-4 that it was for, a couple Ryder Cups before, which I like as well. And I mean, that also gives him a couple more spots for him to qualify through as well on his own volition, because as it stands right now in the OWGR, you can add Brooks in front of him. That's fine. If you do that, he's the 13th ranked American right now. And so he's going to have a real chance. I mean, he is in the prime of his playing career. He's going to play well. I mean, he won twice last season. That is like very hard to do on the PGA Tour. So that's where my kind of hesitancy kind of comes in, where this guy's playing a full PGA Tour schedule. He's playing in all the major championships. He's going to be in there week in and week out. And you can take it as a positive for sure, being, rubbing elbows with the guys who's going to be on the U.S. team. But that's also a ton of responsibility for your day job while also trying to handle the Ryder Cup.
Not only is Keegan a fresh face, Greg, but it seems like his vice captains will be as well, vowing to go younger. Quote, they're going to be a lot younger, closer to playing, which is interesting. I mean, we've seen, I know Zach Johnson is still very active, but like Luke Donald is obviously still playing on the PGA Tour, still playing worldwide. Is there a benefit to having your vice captains be on the PGA Tour or just removed from the PGA Tour on a weekly basis?
Well, potentially. I mean, it obviously depends on who they are and what they bring to the table. I think there are a couple of potentials here and differences that we see with the U.S. side and the European side when it comes to the Ryder Cup. I mean, Eduardo Molinari for the European Ryder Cup team is kind of donned as this hero, right, with data. And this gets thrown around on social media in a bunch of different ways, but it really seems like the Europeans look into the data in somehow a much different way than the U.S. team does. And maybe there's a world where the younger guys are a little more in touch with that. A specific younger guy who's really good with looking into the right data points and analyzing it in the proper way, or has a great stats coach who can kind of come along and help and make these great decisions. I think there's a possibility that going younger leads to better decisions. The other thing that's really cool about Keegan specifically, and I think this will have to do with who he selects as his vice captains, but also how he manages the team, is Keegan won't make this about Keegan, where Tiger can't help it. Tiger can try to make it not about Tiger. It's about Tiger. There's nothing you can do about that. Keegan won't make it about him. He'll try to figure out who the best players are, what the best reasons are for having him on the team, what the best way to set up the golf course is, whether it's what he initially thought or not. And I think that leads to a really good team building experience, at least from the leadership side, from the captains and vice captains side.
Speaking of the best available players, KP, Keegan did not shy away from who was going to be on his team, made it very clear on day one, quote, "I'm going to have the 12 best players on the team. I don't care where they play. So we have a mission to win this tournament. I'm not worried about the live stuff. I want the best players on the team. By the time we get to Bethpage in 2025, we have no clue how the layout of the golf world is going to be. And as it comes to live events, if there's guys that are on the fringe, I'm willing to do that."
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that, well, one, I love his talk about live, because that as far as it relates to the Ryder Cup, it is nonsense. Like, take Bryson, take Brooks, take Gooch, whoever you want to take, like, take them. I think the 12 best players, personally, I don't love that language, because I think it implies, like, hey, if Russell Henley's had a slightly better year than, I don't know, let's say JT or Morikawa, that you take him over JT or Morikawa. I just think that's obviously, like, not true. So it depends on how you define 12 best players, but I think what the US keeps missing is, like, you're putting together a team. You're not putting together 12 individuals. And they just think, like, they beat their heads against the wall thinking, like, well, we've just got the best 12 individuals. I don't understand why we're not winning, like, over and over and over again. And listen, like, it doesn't always, like, taking JT and those guys to Rome, it didn't work, but I thought it gave them, for all the intangibles that somebody like JT or Spieth, whoever, brings to the table, I thought it gave them the best chance of winning. So I know you weren't asking about non-live stuff, but that's sort of my spiel on that.
I was mostly just teeing you up. You can go anywhere you want, giving the people the quotes, the information, and then, you take it wherever you want. It's all good. The Ryder Cup team is like a puzzle, but the US has just they've had, like, no corner pieces. Like, well, now what? Like, what are
we have the 12 best pieces. I don't know why it doesn't work.
Right. Why isn't this working? Why isn't this picture coming together?
But at the same time, what's so interesting about that is, well, we took JT because we got Spieth, right? We got to pair them together. But we got Scheffler, his best bud, Sam Burns. So we got to take Burns, right? Because he's going to play with. So there's also this side where they're trying to build a team. I don't think it's as simple as 12 best players versus a team. I don't think there are players that, oh, well, he's a team guy. He's not a team guy, so we'll take the team guy. It's a hard thing to measure. I think it's a hard thing to build a team. But all in all, I don't think the Americans are simply trying to take the 12 best individuals, but I don't think they know how to build a team. And I'm not saying that I do. I think it's a lot more difficult. It's a nuanced thing to build a golf team.
Yeah,
Sorry, Kyle.
Real quick, I was going to say, I think Joseph Amania was pointing this out on Twitter yesterday. I think it's the Euros do such a good job of being willing to play with whoever, and I think the Americans just think like, and I go back to this quote from last year, like, hey, remember, the American side was like, hey, remember who you are, remember what you've done. And the Euro side was like, hey, forget about who you are, because it's about the team this week. And that it's epitomized by when they paired Tiger and Phil together back in, what was that, 04, Greg?
04. Yeah.
04.
And you're like, I mean, it's Tiger and Phil. It should work. They're unbelievable. They got, 20 combined majors. And it's like, yeah, that's not really like how the Ryder Cup works.
Yeah.
Well,
If Scotty Scheffler cannot play with anybody else but Sam Burns, we've got a big problem as the number one player.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, it's like even JT and Spieth, the analytics team that they had for Whistling Straits, they told Stricker, they're like, you should not pair these two together. They paired them. It worked out for, I think they were like 1-1-1 or something together like that. And then again, they told Zach Johnson, they're like, you don't need to pair these guys together. And you look through the combinations of worst combinations for the U.S. team. The worst combination was JT and Spieth. And then, okay, you bring them for the emotional spark plug. Well, at the same time, let's sit them that morning session too. Let's not get any of that in there either. So
I don't think ZJ did a whole lot of listening to anybody, to be honest.
No, but I think it goes to Greg's point of them they're not consistent with their team building, I will say.
Yeah.
Keegan will listen, I believe.
Well, I think whatever you decide to do, you have to be consistent, and you have to motivate your team that this is the right path, whether it is or not. You can't have exceptions to rules. You can't bounce around. You can't have this second guessing. You just have to have everybody buying in.
And that's sort of what I think Keegan will be good at, right?
I 100% agree.
Like I really do. I think he's such an interesting figure too, because I know the Netflix stuff has been talked about a lot. And, he said today, I hope that's not why I got picked, because I was like, what was he referencing, Patrick? Do you remember that when he said, I hope that's not the reason I got picked, because people saw me crying on Netflix, basically? Is that what he was
Pretty
referencing?
much. Yeah, no, someone pretty much asked him. They're like, do you think you were picked because of Netflix?
But I think that he is somebody that, I was talking to somebody today, and we were talking about how the fans could get behind one of us four if we were the captain, right? Like that doesn't really matter, especially at home. But I think the players do see how much he's strangely, Rick, because of the way his career started, he's become an easy person to get behind if you're a player, or if you're a fan, if you're anybody. And I think I don't think ZJ was ever that for a lot of people, maybe players included. I have no idea, but Keegan is that. And I think that he's become a gout. Like it happened because of the Netflix stuff, but it extended beyond that. I think he's become a very easy person to get behind.
We've got an initial reaction from someone who is very, very likely to be on that Ryder Cup team. And Patrick, I'm going to throw this to you because it's your boy Xander Schauffele here, and bear with me because I'm going to read a couple of quotes here. I feel like Keegan would understand sort of when we need to get up, when we need to practice, and when you need to do this and hopefully dodge anything you don't have to do. And maybe that will help us. Taking a bunch of photos all dressed up. There's 2 or 3 dinners that we have to go to that are kind of mandatory-ish. And I think if we cut it down to 1 or 2 versus 3, that would be a really big deal. End quote. Patrick?
Okay, so 1 or 2 dinners instead of 3, and U.S. is going to win in Ireland in 4 years. Is that what? Am I picking up what he's throwing down? Pretty much.
This is this like. Go ahead, Patrick. I'll just go after you.
He was all over the place, but there were others. He like contradicted himself a couple times. He's like, yeah, we got steamrolled. But also I don't want to take pictures as much as we do. It's like, God forbid you got to go to the Spanish Steps in Rome. I feel really bad for you.
They shut down the town for you. You walked down a red carpet. You ate amazing food. You had to take some photos. The horror.
The whore. As his good friend Patrick Cantlay once said, pampered. Beep. But I will say, generally, they're talking to guys on the range at the Scottish Open. All of them are pumped. Like Jordan, JT, Ricky. I mean, who knows if they're going to be on the team, but they were very excited for him.
Pumped to be assistant captains.
Yeah, I feel like they got to be pumped for him, right?
Okay,
Going to his charity event.
Yeah, two things real quick. One, I forgot about this, I guess, but there's still a remnant of the task force that apparently selects the captain, and JT and Spieth are on that, on that committee. That's kind of crazy when you think about it. I think it was less crazy when it was Tiger and Phil, because you're like, whatever, they're institutions and they're always going to just have whatever spot they want on anything. But with Tiger or with JT and Spieth, what they've kind of turned into as players, which is like fringe Ryder Cuppers, it's pretty crazy that they're selecting the captain, because there's going to be some implicit pressure to reciprocate the favor, right?
Were Jordan Spieth and Justin Thomas, Greg, were they anointed a little too early?
Were they anointed a little too early? Well, I think this will be. I think this will be telling.
They looked like they were going to be 8-time major winners. They were never going to go through slumps. They were going to be Ryder Cup superstars. It has not turned out that way.
No, it is not. But I don't know if that means that they were anointed too early. I think it's up to the captain, and there's a balance there. But that force has a couple players, but I think it's also balanced out by some PGA of America members, so executives, people like that. So you have basically it gives you input from players who are likely to be on the U.S. Ryder Cup team. I mean, it's a really difficult thing when you want to get player input. You either have to go to older players who would be fine with vice captaincies, like Tiger Woods, like Steve Stricker and Fred Couples, that group, or you go with your most likely Ryder Cup participants, who probably are Spieth and JT. If you look at it over a period of 10 years, not a period of, what are they doing right now? Like, what should it be? Cantlay and Schauffele in there instead? Because they're much more likely to be on the team.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I know we got to get to a break here, Rick. But last thing, Xander can just pound sand. Like this is a joke. Like what are you talking about, dude? Like, and honestly, like, forget all the how cool it is. Even if you feel this way, like, have enough self-awareness to say it behind closed doors, and not to, not in front of a public that's like, what are you doing? Think about the Euros saying something like this publicly. It would never happen. I actually tweeted back at Brent. I think Brentley had that quote. And I was like, the Euros have been saying this for years. They haven't. It was a joke.
Well, they haven't because they only have 1 to 2 dinners. Okay.
Yeah.
It's honestly embarrassing. Like, that's an embarrassing quote, and it should never be said by anybody.
Yeah.
What do you guys?
That's the absolute softest thing I've ever heard anybody say.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you guys, what do you guys think about him just getting the call random afternoon? It's like, hey, buddy, you're the Ryder Cup captain.
That's insane too.
Yeah. So here's the quote on that. I didn't have one conversation with anybody about this until I was told I was the captain. I got the call from Seth and John and Zach, and I had trouble talking when they called me. I felt funny after the call because I don't think I reacted in the way they were expecting me to. He would go on to say he was in complete shock. Is that normal? That can't be normal.
Normal sport? No. I pulled this Paul McGinley quote from, I think it was during the Hero. Was he doing the commentary for the Hero World Challenge?
Yes.
So he was on there. It was right after Luke Donald had been selected for Bethpage, and he was like, this is part of our long-term plan, and we have several more steps after this, which reminded me of Phil saying,
we're on step
35 step but it was like such a clear, like, oh, the Euros are, they might not win, they probably won't win, but they're just planning this out. And then the US side's like, Keegan sounds good, he won a PGA once. Yeah, call him, See if he's available.
It's amazing. We've got 14 months to talk more about this. So we're going to put a pin in it right now. Keegan Bradley is your American 2025 Ryder Cup captain.